Okay,
Can you hear me
Aaron,
now?
we got you. All right. Yeah. This was it. My clicker wasn't clicking. It happens to a guy sometimes.
It's a very helpless feeling when I'm sitting here listening and you're trying to bring me on, and I was talking and you weren't hearing me, but it sounds like we're all connected up now.
We're all together now. First of all, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Listen, you wrote a piece saying that that Trump's comments on his intelligence briefings, which he receives as a major party candidate, astonished former intelligence officials. And by astonish, I think you mean not in a good way, right?
Right. And so, if people, to refresh people's memories, if you tuned in on Wednesday night during the candidate forum that aired live on NBC, at one point, Trump, discussing his first two intelligence briefings, mentioned that he was asked if there was anything from those briefings that shocked him. And he replied that the thing that he found shocking was that based on the body language of his briefers and, some things that they perhaps said to him, he gathered that the briefers and the intelligence community by extension were not fans of Barack Obama's foreign policy. So he basically tried during the course of this candidate forum to politicize his intelligence briefings. And three different former intelligence community officials that I spoke with yesterday, all three of them were appalled by the comments because, in their view, this was pretty much unprecedented for a candidate to disclose information from one of those briefings, which are, of course, supposed to be kept in-house. And not only that, but they found Trump's account of what happened to be quite implausible because, of course, briefers are not in the business of making policy recommendations or advising on policy. They're supposed to be conveying information. So talking to people who have been in the room when briefings of this sort are being done, they to a person said that they can't think of a time where a briefer has tipped off their political beliefs in that sort of way. And furthermore, they can't think of a time when a candidate has tried to politicize the briefings in the way that Trump did. So it kind of flew below the radar with a lot of the other stuff that was going on Wednesday night during that candidate forum. But for people who have worked in the intelligence community, that was something that stuck with them, following the event.
So when they were describing their reaction to this, what was their body language? No, I'm kidding. But what struck me about that, Aaron, was that I can't even it seemed like another transparent Trump lie. I mean, I hadn't thought about the aspect that you covered in your story, which is that it's a violation of the protocol and the kind of, the respect with which you're supposed to treat national intelligence. I also thought if that's what impresses him, obviously they didn't brief him on the real nature of Area 51, but I guess it just doesn't strike me that there's any kind of body language in real life that a person could have that could convey a complex message like, I didn't respect the president of the United States when I was saying this to him. I mean, it just sounds made up, doesn't it?
Yeah, and this is kind of par for the course for Trump, and I wouldn't be surprised if he had if he came to the realization that this is something that he can't really be fact-checked on, because I don't think any of those briefers are going to come forward and disclose, how the briefing went. Of course, the Washington Post, which I mentioned in my Think Progress piece from yesterday, the Post reported that retired General Michael Flynn, who has emerged as a prominent Trump surrogate, actually made a bit of a scene during the briefing, by denouncing the president during the course of, the first briefing that Trump had last month. So, at least that much information has trickled out. I'm not sure who leaked that information to the Post, but, I wouldn't be surprised if this is a situation kind of as you suggested, where Trump realized that he could get away with, trying to capitalize on his briefings politically in doing that with impunity. And so, he kind of ran with this narrative that somehow one of the briefers' body language or, multiple briefers indicated that they're not fans of the president. So, it is kind of par for the course for Trump in that way. Hillary Clinton hit back at him yesterday for that comment, basically saying that she would never disclose any information that she received during one of her candidate briefings. And again, talking to people in the intelligence community who have been around briefers who provide these briefings specifically to presidential candidates, which is basically a courtesy for them to keep them informed, on developments internationally that agencies are tracking. To a person, they said that they cannot, think of another time where a presidential candidate, one of the two major party candidates, disclosed information, or information probably is the wrong word given, that this is Trump we're talking about, but, tried to politicize the briefings in the way that he has.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think he didn't disclose anything because it doesn't sound at all true. And, I think maybe we go too far as a country in sort of putting on a pedestal the intelligence services, who definitely have their own politics and their own biases and their own issues, and certainly have misbehaved in the past. But the fact is, these guys, these briefers, they're professionals. Their demeanor is extremely professional. It's sir, madam. It's it is not anything like what Trump describes. But I guess the question then is, can we trust a guy who's going to misrepresent intelligence, who's going to politicize the process of being given confidential information? Doesn't this just kind of add to the notion that Trump is unstable and untrustworthy?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that, think back a month ago when, during a news conference that Trump had following the RNC, when he openly encouraged Russian hackers to hack in, to try and obtain the emails that Hillary Clinton had deleted from her private server. And he mentioned that the media would reward those hackers handsomely if they could come up with those emails. So, that kind of started a drumbeat of people saying that Trump shouldn't receive these briefings in the first place because he can't be trusted with sensitive information. And, this is kind of another aspect of that worry that, people who are at home watching that event on Wednesday, maybe haven't been following as close as you or I follow, political developments, and might, be left with the impression that, maybe there is something to this notion that the intelligence community, for whatever reason, aren't fans of President Obama. So, yeah, I mean, it's par for the course for Trump. This is something he's been doing for a long time during his campaign, but it does play into the concerns that people had even before he was briefed about how he would handle these briefings.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest concern about Trump is that he doesn't seem to have what most people have, which is a kind of governing device between his brain and his mouth. So, any freaking thing that he hears, no matter how highly confidential, he'll just make up something, or he'll blurt it out, or any thought that comes into his head. And I'm not sure I want that guy with his finger on the button and his ear being filled with our deepest, darkest secrets.
Yeah. And that's, what you just said about having the finger on the button. I mean, I think that is the aspect that a lot of people lose sight of. A lot of Republicans who haven't necessarily been huge fans of Trump but are supporting him nonetheless, put forth the argument that, well, President Trump is better than President Clinton because even if he's unpredictable, if Congress continues to be controlled by Republicans, that'll act as a check on his worst impulses. But this is a guy who will have the nuclear codes, and there have been former officials who have done media appearances recently and said that the nuclear process is designed to make a quick decision. It isn't designed to deliberate. If the president calls for a nuclear strike, there is not necessarily a lot of deliberation, in between that decision being made and the missiles being launched. And, that's what we are facing with the prospect of President Trump. And so, when I see Republicans make that sort of argument and kind of try to downplay the threat that he represents, that's the clearest example that checks and balances might not be sufficient to control him.
Especially even if it's non-nuclear, we now have a long history of unfortunately, both Democrats and Republicans engaging in war activity without seeking the prior approval of Congress, sending the military to intervene somewhere. And the President of the United States, because of the power of that office, can destabilize whole regions of the planet with just a sentence. Something that the President says could have major political impact, could undermine a government or a treaty or whatever. So it's all scary stuff, and I continue to remain very frightened about the prospect of President Trump. So Aaron Rupar, Associate Editor of Think Progress, thanks for writing this piece, and thanks for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. Anytime.
You bet.